Hey everybody, Pisces season, new moon in Pisces energy. Pisces is about healing, it's about submitting, it's about vulnerability, it's also about creativity, beauty, love, unconditional love, and compassion. Pisces is also talking about the experience, right? And how one may react to its experience or its overall experience. It's kind of like reacting to the weather, and the weather is constantly changing, and mutable is changeable, like Pisces. So our feelings about things might be a little bit wavy, confusing, maybe even depressing or damaging, right? Because by the time we get around to the last sign, we think about like the damages, the wins, the losses. We think about how we want to get away from it all, right? We think about that saying, at the end of the day, that type of thing. But then the energy also sort of like kind of centers around like this yearning or like this need for something better, right? Because it's talking about wanting something to improve. But then because you're giving compassion to all the things, or you're considering all of the different variables or options, it's like it gets kind of confusing. And then it's like, what are you actually subscribing to? Are you subscribing to everything? You know? Are you communicating in the right ways? Are you taking time to think about how you communicate? Or is it just coming from a place of, what's been precipitated? It's the rise and the fall, right? I feel like because that Pisces energy is talking about a need for security on a spiritual level, right? It talks about emotional health and mental health in a sense. And definitely that, because Mercury is in Pisces. So it's doing what's good for your mental health, right? And if that means that you have to sort of escape from that which, triggers the insecurity or, the emotional upheaval, right? Because it is talking about Jupiter, which is like big, all the things. And then Neptune is like all the things turned upside down. So it's kind of like disorienting, right? It's like you may not know exactly where you are, but you can tell what's happening around you, right? Like you know what the weather's like, but there's nowhere to sort of like turn to get out of it, right? It's like you have to go through it. You can't get around it, you have to go through it, right? Honey, I'm looking at this camera. Yeah. So it's important to allow yourself to like do those things that you enjoy that actually bring about some level of healing or satisfaction, because I feel like with all of the beautiful signs, they're talking about some level of satisfaction that needs to be achieved before one can move on to the next thing, right? Or before one can initiate, there has to be initiate something new. There has to be a level of satisfaction that is being achieved with what's being like closed out. In some cases, not all, but in some, in most. I'm walking by someone who's talking to themselves and screaming at cars. Very Neptune, you'll see. Older. I'm doing laundry right now, so I'm just kind of walking around trying to make sure that, no idea, don't know. It's a beautiful day though. Sunday. I'm reading later at Shanti, Bookshop and Crystal Gallery on 14th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. That plug, right? Yeah, so Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter is talking about expansion, it's talking about travel, it's talking about traversing, it's talking about, trekking. It's kind of like that energy of like Odysseus in the Odyssey, right? Pisces and Sagittarius both have that energy of Poseidon and Zeus, which are both intense, right? And very elusive. That's why it's easy to be in denial or to be disillusioned or to be just kind of like all over the place or very tucked into one place, right? Because you need protection from the weather. But then again, you also have to weather the storm. And that's talking about going through it. And that's something that I can relate to. I can go with that energy. I have Pluto in my first house. Pluto is the esoteric ruler of Pisces. So that tells you a little bit something there on a deeper level. But, yeah. I feel like it's also kind of like the dreamscape, right? Like, what has the dreamscape been? I feel like it's also that energy of like surrendering to your dreams. There's a house over here. It's like a straight up house in Manhattan on 169th Street. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna turn around because I actually don't have that much time before I have to go and see about my laundry. And also I don't want to walk up the block that I just came from. Right. Pisces energy can be a bit dodgy as well. Right? Because it's trying to run away from like the weather, right? Like that type of thing. Oh. Yes. But it's a beautiful energy, very playful, very loving. It rules hospitals, any institution that helps people heal or tries to figure out how to heal, right? That type of thing. Hospitals, prisons, insane asylums, all kinds of things like that. It also gives you that energy of like the child in the womb almost. It's weird because it's like it is being in between two places at one time. Because when you're crossing over, and I'm saying the number 33 as I'm saying that, as you're crossing over or leaving this reality and going into the next reality, you're probably awaiting a reincarnation, maybe. And it's like between the death and the rebirth is like this gestation period, which is kind of like that energy of the Empress, which is Venus, right? Because the Empress is pregnant in the tarot card, Major Arcana number 3, the Empress. But then the Hanged Man is number 12, which is also a 3, okay? and that's Pisces, that's Neptune, and that's being in between. So it is talking about that. So some of us are being reborn in different ways. Our energy is going to be, resuscitated. We're going to be taking that first breath of something new after the retrograde, after the Virgo full moon, once we get closer to Aries season. Okay, we always feel a little bit different around that time. And yeah, let's get into that Virgo full moon. So the moon is significant in Pisces, but it also is in Virgo too. Like, here's that man again, I'm talking about the moon and Neptune. Esoterically, the moon rules Virgo. And if you think about it, the Hermit is major arcana number 9. Okay? And the moon is 18, which reduces to a 9. So, this Virgo full moon is definitely talking about completion. It's definitely talking about going inward, and it's the inner hidden fears that I feel like people are also dealing with around that time of like Pisces season, right? And it's still being influenced by those planets that rule the 9th house in Virgo, and the tarot being represented by the Hermit, which is number 9. Okay. And number 9 talks about your foundations as well, right? Your spiritual beliefs and your foundations in terms of like what you may have learned from like the mother, or what you may have learned from like the parental source that nurtured your experience and your, knowledge, and sort of like helped, foster and cultivate intellect, right? Because your mother teaches you. But the moon is also representative of you and your inner spirit, and what your inner spirit learns. Well, not spirit, but that subconscious, what your subconscious is learning along the way, right? Because the moon is representative of your subconscious, and it's going through an experience of learning to cope. So we're talking about coping mechanisms too with that Neptune energy. Escapism, right? Escaping into feelings. Letting that get like the best of us. Sometimes. It's pretty early on Sunday, so it's like there's not really a lot of traffic or cars running around. But yeah, coping mechanisms, that type of thing. Yeah, the number 9, definitely talking about completions. But number 9 is definitely like a healing number for sure. It's a very powerful number, and also related to like, God-like energy, I would say. Because you can take any number and add it up. You take that sum and multiply it by 9, and the result, you add those numbers up, and you'll still get 9. So that number 9 is super duper powerful. But yeah. And if you think about Cancer being ruled by the moon, it looks like 6 and 9, and the 6th house is Virgo, which esoterically the moon rules. And then it's a 9, which the moon really likes being in Sagittarius. And Jupiter and Neptune, planets that rule Sag, like being in Cancer. Another house. And another one. So crazy. I've like never really seen this, but I've never been around this block. Maybe once, when I also did like a street talk or something. But clearing, cleaning, beautifying, softening, right? You've got to heal the wounds, that type of thing. Shake off the impact, right? It's also talking about fortifying your spirit as well, cleansing and strengthening. But yeah, that Virgo full moon, what plans have you been putting in place? In terms of work, you know, business, also, what are you willing to change, or what have you been feeling like needs to change, right? That could be improved, that could be better, that type of thing. We're trying to iron out certain details that need to be ironed out, right? Because it's always talking about turning over a new leaf with Virgo energy, right? It's very explorative of its realistic, you know, conditions. So it explores its conditions and sees how it can improve them. And it is kind of scary, like the moon would be, because you're trying to look at stuff that may not actually work, or you may not be nurturing in the right ways, or stuff that you might be ignoring, or things like that, you know what I mean? So it kind of like really does get very critical, and it is kind of like an emotional experience when you're being critiqued, you know? But it's the self-critique, right? With the Virgo full moon. Not necessarily being critiqued by others, it's a self-critique that I feel like we are looking at, paying attention to, revealing to ourselves, you know? The sixth house is talking about doing what works for you. So what hasn't been working for you that you would like to see work for you? Or what hasn't been working for you that no longer will work for you? And what can you look for or create or find that does work for you? Or what can you fix? Improvements, right? Adaptability. But it's also being more consistent. So we're thinking about how we can be more consistent with the Virgo full moon. And we're also looking for how things can be more consistent for us, right? All around. Because Virgo's talking about all around, right? The nature of things, the science of things, the balance of things, the harmony of things. Because remember the Lover's card, right? All of that. Ooh, I'm doing a lot today. I've never done laundry on a Sunday before having to go to work. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this. And I'm sure maybe I'll do something around the Virgo full moon, but we are definitely clearing energy. But it's also a retrograde, so don't make any decisions until after the retrograde. You know, let this time pass, let this energy pass, and then we'll be able to understand what to do. It's a 3. The third house is Gemini ruled by Mercury, and number 12 major arcana is the Hangman, which is Neptune. That's Pisces, and it's related to time, waiting, okay? And letting time do something for you. Because sometimes you do need to just pull away and let things happen naturally.